Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Cooking with Kimmie, and today we're gonna be making focaccia. Focaccia? Focaccia. Early in quarantine, we were doing a series called Flour-the-Mentals where we were making lots of things with flour. So we wanted to kind of bring that back a little bit and show you guys a very basic focaccia that's very easy to make and very easy to put together with just a couple of ingredients. Later on, I'll show you how to kind of customize it using different toppings and things like that. So we'll get started on the dough. Wee-hee! So here we have 6.5 cups of flour. You can use bread flour or all-purpose flour here. It doesn't really matter. You can use whatever you have on hand. So this is 6.5 cups or about 780 grams of flour. And my stand mixer is fitted with a dough hook. So here is salt. I'm just gonna put this on one side. And then I'll put our yeast on the other side. There is a tablespoon of salt and 8 grams of dried yeast. Instant yeast. I'll put the yeast on the other side of the salt. When you're making bread and things like that, you never want to put the yeast directly on top of the salt because they don't like each other and the salt can kill the yeast. So I always like to put it on the opposite end, and then I'm just gonna mix it until the salt and the yeast are kind of dispersed evenly in the flour. So once that's done mixing, I'm gonna pour in all of our water. I have 3.5 cups of water here, and I'm just gonna pour it all in. So I'm just gonna mix this until a dough begins to form. So as it's mixing, I'm just gonna scrape down the sides just so that all the flour gets incorporated. And you might have to do this every once in a while just to make sure there's no dry spots left on the side or on the bottom. So we're just gonna mix this for about 5 to 8 minutes until a sticky dough forms. This dough is going to feel and look a little bit wetter than your regular bread dough, which kind of comes together in a ball. And that's perfectly fine because that's what we're looking for, and that's how we'll get those really airy bubbles. Once it's been about 8 minutes, you're gonna see the dough start to kind of come up the hook. The dough is gonna be a little bit wetter than you might think. It will come together as it rests. Just wanna make sure there's no wet parts. No dry parts at the bottom. So once you're at this stage, you're gonna take your olive oil and use half. So this is 3/4 cup. So about half of that, we're gonna pour into the bowl with the dough. And you can just eyeball this because the rest of the olive oil is gonna go on later anyway. And you're just gonna mix this in. It doesn't have to mix in fully, just so that maybe half the olive oil is incorporated into the dough. But if there's olive oil outside of the dough, that's perfectly fine. That's kind of what we're looking for here. And as you can see, our dough, which was very slack or very wet, now is kind of forming into something that holds its shape as soon as you put the oil in. So I'm just gonna kind of cut through the middle so that more oil gets in the middle. Just keep on folding it, stirring it through. And when most of the oil is in the dough and you can see just like a thin layer or thin film on top, then you're ready. I'm just gonna cover this with plastic wrap and you're gonna let it rest for about 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours, depending on how warm it is in your kitchen. You're just looking for it to really grow. It's gonna about double in size. Check on it in like 2.5 or 3 hours, and then I'll show you guys how much growth you're looking for in the dough and in your life. If you wanted to make this recipe without a stand mixer, you could mix the flour, salt, yeast, and water together, and you could cover it before putting the oil in and let it rest in your fridge for about 12 hours. And that could kind of take the place of what we did here with the mixer, and then continue with the step of folding in the oil and putting the plastic wrap over and letting it rest. So if you wanted to make it without a stand mixer, you can go ahead and do that. Here, I covered it in plastic wrap, and we'll see you in 3 hours. Bye! It's been rising in a warm place for about 3 hours. As you can see, it's more than doubled in size, and that is exactly what you're looking for. So here we have the remaining measurement of olive oil, and I'm just gonna pour it all over a sheet tray. Essentially, this bread kind of fries and bakes in olive oil, so you want to use a nice quality olive oil. And we're just going to take the dough. Try your best not to deflate it too much. It will deflate, of course, when you transfer it. I'm just gonna loosen the edges as I pour it out. As you can see, there's so much bubbles and activity, and that oil that we didn't really mix in to the dough all the way kind of lands on top, which is perfect. Then with your fingers, you're just gonna want to dimple the dough and kind of stretch it out almost to the edges of your sheet tray. So to prevent it from sticking, I put my fingers in the oil first, and then I continue doing it with the dough. It might not stretch out completely, but that's okay because it will rise in the oven. And this is the part where you can kind of customize any toppings that you might want on your focaccia. You can put vegetables, salts, dried herbs, spices, anything like that. Here I have some pink salt. You can use rock salt, which is great also. Some chili powder and some Italian seasoning. But again, you can do whatever toppings you want. So I'm just gonna put the toppings on this focaccia, and then we'll bake it in a preheated oven at 450 degrees for about 40 to 45 minutes. I put this on a 9x13, a little bit bigger sheet tray. And this focaccia comes out a little bit thinner, and this is perfect for things like sandwiches. If you wanted a thicker, more traditional focaccia, you could use a container that's higher and maybe 3/4 or half the size, and that would get you your traditional like thick dipping focaccia. So you have some options, and we'll list them down below. This is what we did with ours, with some salt and seasoning and chili, and we'll come back when it's ready. So it's been about 40 minutes in the oven. As you can see, our focaccia is nice and golden brown, like deeply golden brown. The underneath is also golden brown, and because it's technically like fried in all that olive oil and soaked up all that olive oil, it has that nice flavor and it doesn't really stick to the pan. As you can see, the focaccia is hot. It's nice and airy. There's some big holes here in the crumb, and it's the perfect size to cut in half and fill it with whatever you like. I'm just gonna cut it into squares. And again, you can top this with any toppings. Ooh, look at that. And the underside is also nice and crispy. And again, this isn't the most traditional way, but it is super easy. Quicker and more hands-off than a lot of recipes are, and gets you a great final product. So there was our easy basic focaccia recipe. If you guys make it, please let us know. Take some pictures, send them over to us, like and subscribe our videos, and for more recipes like this one, do all the things I just said. Like and subscribe our videos, follow us on Pepper.ph, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye! Thanks for joining. Love you.